welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a Shakespearean play that has baffled and fascinated in equal measure for centuries, Troilus and Cressida.
Ah, yes. This one's, well, it isn't your typical Romeo and Juliet or Hamlet, is it?
Not at all.
Even people who've, spent years studying Shakespeare often find this one a bit of a puzzle. So if you've ever felt a little lost when encountering it, think of this as your guided tour, kind of to understanding what makes it so unique and often debated.
Absolutely. And we've gathered some fantastic resources for this exploration. We'll be diving into William J. Rolfe's insightful edition, looking at his preface, introduction, and those detailed notes.
Right.
Of course, we have the play's text itself, and a real treat, a preface that appeared in one of the very first printed versions of the play.
Oh, the quarto preface.
Exactly, those early quarto editions. Basically, individual playbooks published before the larger collected editions came along.
Yeah, those are fascinating. And our goal today is to really get under the skin of Troilus and Cressida. We want to understand why it feels so different from Shakespeare's other works, explore its key characteristics, and hopefully uncover some surprising insights into what it tells us about human nature and, well, the complexities of the world.
Okay, let's start then by looking at how this play was initially seen. One of those early quarto editions, as you mentioned, included a preface with a rather intriguing title. A Neuer Writer to an Euer Reader. News. It's striking how enthusiastic the tone is, isn't it?
It truly is. I mean, the writer, and we still don't know for sure who it was, boldly states that the play is exceptionally witty and offers profound insights into real life.
Yeah, hyping it up.
Totally. And what's particularly interesting is the prediction that it will become highly sought after once Shakespeare is gone. It makes you wonder, if they saw something in the text that set it apart even then.
And yet, this is the strange part, we have no record of it being performed during Shakespeare's lifetime. Right? And it hasn't exactly been a consistent presence on the stage, even in later years.
Yeah.
That's quite a contrast to such, confident early praise.
It is a puzzle, definitely. This long absence from the stage suggests that perhaps its appeal lay more in the reading than the performance, or maybe theatrical taste just didn't align with its unique qualities for a long time. And adding to this sense of it being hard to categorize is its placement in the 1609 folio, that big collected edition.
Oh yeah, where did they put it?
It was kind of sandwiched between the tragedies and the histories, almost as if the editors themselves weren't quite sure where it fit. And let's not forget, the prologue to the play actually presents it as a comedy.
So it's all over the place. Not quite a comedy, not quite a tragedy, feeling out of place amongst the history plays. It's really carving its own path.
Exactly.
What about when it was actually written? Is there a clear consensus on that? Or is that debated too?
Oh, the dating is also a subject of scholarly debate. No surprise there, maybe?
Right.
While we can't say definitively, some evidence points to it being initially written as early as around 1602. But then there's also talk of possible revisions happening, maybe between 1606 and 1609.
Okay, so a potential range there.
Yeah, and this period, it places it alongside some of Shakespeare's most intellectually complex and thematically rich works, which might shed some light on why it feels so different.
Okay, here's where it gets really fascinating for me. Let's talk about where Shakespeare actually got the story from. It wasn't a completely original invention, was it?
No, not at all. For the love story, the Troilus and Cressida part, Shakespeare almost certainly drew inspiration from Chaucer's poem Troilus and Cressida.
Ah, Chaucer.
Yeah, a major source. And then for the parts of the play set within the Greek and Trojan camps during the war, his sources were likely medieval retellings of the Trojan War legend.
Right, not directly Homer, maybe.
Well, maybe not only Homer. Things like Caxton's Recul of the Histories of Troy, or maybe Lydgate's History, Sedge, and Destruction of Troy. These were really popular in Shakespeare's time.
So he's taking these medieval versions, these popular stories, and layering something else on top. Is that the idea?
Precisely. Shakespeare also appears to have been familiar with contemporary translations of Homer's Iliad. So it's this blend, this mix of medieval romance and classical epic.
Which explains some things.
Yeah, it accounts for some of the intriguing discrepancies we see when comparing Shakespeare's play to Homer's original. Like, a key example is the medieval tradition of Hector being murdered by Achilles and his Myrmidons.
Oh, right. That's not in the Iliad.
Exactly. It contradicts the portrayal in the Iliad. So Shakespeare is clearly drawing on these later, different traditions, too.
Okay, so a real mix of different takes on the Trojan War. That definitely sounds like it would contribute to a unique flavor. Now, William Rolfe, In his edition, he highlights some key characteristics that really set this play apart. He even calls it undramatic in some ways. What does he mean by that?
Yeah, that's a strong word. Undramatic. Rawls argues that the play is very structured, the way the characters are presented, and its overall purpose all contribute to this sense of it not being traditionally dramatic.
Yeah, so.
He suggests that there's a notable lack of sort of sharply defined, consistent individual traits in the characters when you compare them to other great Shakespearean figures.
I think I know what he means.
Yeah. They don't always act or speak in ways that feel entirely aligned with a singular, clear personality arc, you know?
That resonates. I remember feeling like the characters weren't as fully realized, perhaps, as someone like Hamlet or Lady Macbeth. And Rolfe even suggests that Ulysses might be considered the central figure in all of this.
Yes, exactly. Rolfe proposes that Ulysses might be the key to unlocking the play, sort of embodying a particular Ulyssian view of life.
Okay.
He even goes as far as to suggest that in this play, Shakespeare is Ulysses, or perhaps Ulysses is Shakespeare, implying that Ulysses' speeches and pronouncements might reflect Shakespeare's own mature, considered perspectives on the world. It's almost as if the playwright is using this character to voice his own observations, maybe more directly than usual.
Interesting. So maybe the play is less about a compelling narrative arc and more about exploring certain ideas through these characters, especially Ulysses. And the dialogue itself is often described as sententious and satirical. What does that actually entail?
Well, think of sententious dialogue as the characters delivering these almost mini essays within the play, packed with worldly wisdom, moral observations.
Little pronouncements.
Exactly. And the satirical element comes in with a sharp, often cynical edge to these pronouncements. It's filled with insightful commentary on human nature, often expressed through very vivid and memorable metaphors. It's less about dramatic action unfolding moment to moment, and more about these intellectual and, often quite cutting remarks being made.
So it's not neatly fitting into tragedy or comedy. Rolfe calls it a tragic comic history. How do those elements play out together?
He sees it as mirroring the kind of messy reality of the world, doesn't he? Where serious, even tragic events are constantly intertwined with the more mundane and at times even, farcical aspects of human behavior.
Right, like the epic backdrop of the war.
Exactly, the Trojan War. But then you also have these petty arguments, the scheming, and the often farcical romantic entanglements. Especially with Pandarus, it's this blend that creates that unique, tragic comic feel.
And there's also this sense Rolfe mentions of ill humor and bitter satire. It sounds like it's not really trying to present heroic figures in a straightforwardly admirable light.
Exactly, that's a key point.
Oh.
The play seems less interested in celebrating traditional virtues, courage, honor, noble love, and more focused on exposing what Rolfe calls contemptible weakness and paltry vanity.
Ouch.
Yeah. It's a much more critical and even, you could say, disillusioned portrayal of these legendary figures of the Trojan War than you might expect.
This brings us to a great question posed by the critic Edward Dowden. With what intention and in what spirit did Shakespeare write this strange comedy? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? He points out that even the seemingly noble Greek heroes are ridiculed, and characters like Hector, who is often seen as virtuous, are shown to have their flaws, their moments of pride or bad judgment.
Dowden's question really gets to the heart of the play's enduring mystery. Why would Shakespeare, arguably at the height of his creative powers, produce a work that so deliberately seems to undermine the heroic ideals associated with the Trojan War and present its key figures in such an unflattering, sometimes cynical way?
Yeah.
It definitely prompts us to consider his mindset at the time and perhaps even a shift in his perspective during this period of his writing.
Let's look at some specific moments in the play then, because there are some brilliant bits. Take that extended metaphor in Act 1, Scene 2, where Troilus and Pandarus are talking about the long wait for Cressida, comparing it to baking a cake.
Oh yeah, the cake metaphor. It's brilliant, isn't it? A very sort of domestic analogy for the intense emotions of romantic longing and impatience.
It really lands.
It does. The detailed description of grinding the wheat, sifting it, adding the leavening, kneading the dough, the actual baking, and then even the cooling time, it humorously, also quite effectively, captures the impatience and often frustrating anticipation that comes with pursuing someone you desire.
And then in that same scene, you have Cressida's witty and quite evasive exchanges with Pandarus. She's clearly more intelligent and shrewd than she sometimes lets on.
Absolutely. Her back and forth with Pandarus reveals a really sharp intellect and a playful but also maybe guarded understanding of the social games of courtship. Her line about lying upon my back to defend my belly, upon my wit to defend my wiles.
On my secrecy to defend mine honesty. Yeah.
It's a wonderfully concise and witty illustration of her self-awareness and the defenses she feels she needs to employ in this world. Very telling.
Then there are Ulysses' famous speeches on order and degree in society in Act 1, Scene 3. They're often quoted, and for good reason. They offer such a powerful insight into the potential for chaos when social hierarchy breaks down.
Oh, absolutely central. Ulysses' speeches here are key to the play's exploration of social and political order, his powerful image of appetite as a universal wolf.
Right, the wolf.
That will ultimately devour everything, including itself. Yeah.
It really underscores the idea that without structure and a respect for established ranks, or degree, as he calls it, society is destined to collapse into anarchy.
It feels very relevant somehow.
It really does. What Shakespeare, through Ulysses, is really drilling down on here is the idea that even seemingly natural hierarchies need constant reinforcement against the chaotic appetite of individuals. It's a surprisingly, maybe even disturbingly modern take on social cohesion, suggesting that the rules aren't just naturally there. They need constant buy-in, constant effort to prevent societal breakdown. We also see Ulysses' strategic manipulation and keen psychological insights in his advice regarding Achilles and Ajax in Act 2, Scene 3. He's a master of understanding and exploiting their egos, isn't he?
Oh, completely. What's fascinating here is Ulysses' almost Machiavellian approach. He has this deep, maybe cynical understanding of the psychology of these proud warriors.
Yeah, he plays them like fiddles.
He does. He knows precisely how to manipulate their vanity, their pride, their jealousy to serve the Greek cause. It's a cynical, perhaps even unsettling, but undeniably effective display of political maneuvering. Really sharp stuff.
And the debate in the Trojan Council in Act 2, Scene 2, about whether they should keep Helen, wow. It presents such diverse perspectives on honor, value, and the truly devastating cost of war.
That scene is brilliant. It's like a perfect microcosm of the entire conflict, right? You have Hector's reasoned, logical argument for returning Helen.
Which seems sensible.
It does, but it's juxtaposed with Paris's more emotional infatuation and Troilus' passionate, maybe slightly naive defense of their honor.
And Cassandra comes in.
Right. And Cassandra's prophetic warnings, which are ultimately just ignored, add this really chilling layer of tragic irony. It just emphasizes the Trojans' self-destructive path, even as they are being explicitly warned.
And we absolutely have to talk about Thersites, his constant cynical and railing commentary on absolutely everyone. He's like the play's resident truth teller, albeit a very bitter and unpleasant one.
Thersites. Yeah, as Rolf aptly notes, he is a truly fascinating character, almost like a crude and vulgar version of Iago, maybe? Lacking Iago's sharp intellect and courage, perhaps, but driven by a similar kind of self-generated malice and contempt for everyone.
He just hates everything.
Pretty much. He provides this relentless stream of scathing criticism, constantly cutting through any illusions of heroism or nobility, and exposing the baser motives, the ugliness of both the Greeks and the Trojans. He spares no one.
Then the love story itself, between Troilus and Cressida, it takes such a sharp and painful turn, doesn't it? Cressida's perceived fickleness, especially in Act V, Scene 2, as witnessed by a heartbroken Troilus, it's a deeply disillusioning moment.
Oh, the betrayal scene is absolutely pivotal, gut-wrenching, really. Troilus's shattered idealism as he watches Cressida with Diomedes. It's arguably one of the most poignant and brutal moments in the entire play.
It feels so modern in its cynicism about love sometimes.
It really does. It speaks volumes about the fragility of love, maybe especially young love, when it's caught in the crossfire of war, politics, and, well, human weakness and expediency.
There are some really striking and memorable images and metaphors woven throughout the play too, aren't there? Rolf points out Cressida being referred to as the base and pillar of Troy.
Yeah, that's a powerful one.
And that idea we mentioned earlier of appetite as a universal wolf.
These images really encapsulate some of the key thematic concerns. Cressida as the base and pillar highlights her perceived importance, the symbolic weight placed upon her, maybe unfairly in the context of Troy's fate. And the universal wolf serves as that powerful representation of the destructive, all-consuming nature of unchecked desire and ambition that fuels so much of the conflict. These images stick with you.
And Rolf also draws attention, quite rightly, to Shakespeare's intricate use of wordplay and extended metaphors. It's not just the grand themes that are complex. The very language of the play is often dense and multi-layered.
Absolutely. The sheer density of the language, the frequent use of sophisticated rhetorical devices, puns, paradoxes, and the multiple layers of meaning embedded in the wordplay. It all contributes to the play's challenging reputation, but also to its richness for those who are willing to really, dig into it.
You really have to pay attention.
You do. It's like the characters are often speaking on multiple levels at once. It demands concentration.
Moving on slightly to Shakespeare's craftsmanship in this play, Rolfe notes the variations in the meter and the way he shifts between verse and prose. What does that tell us about the play and perhaps when it was written?
Well, the metrical variations, the rhythm of the lines and the fluid movement between verse and prose are indeed characteristic of Shakespeare's later writing style. More flexible, perhaps. But the tricky thing is, the play also contains stylistic elements that we see more in his earlier works. So the presence of both early and later styles further complicates the task of pinpointing the exact date of composition.
So it feeds back into that dating uncertainty we talked about.
Exactly. It suggests maybe a period of transition for him, or perhaps even experimentation in his dramatic writing, or maybe those revisions we mentioned earlier.
Rolfe also makes a rather blunt observation, mentioning an alloy of inferior matter that fills the spaces between what he calls the loftier and brighter thoughts. That's quite a harsh assessment, isn't it?
It is rather direct, a bit unvarnished. Rolfe's suggestion is essentially that Shakespeare, perhaps working somewhat hastily or maybe with less consistent inspiration throughout the writing process, included sections that don't quite reach the same level of brilliance as the play's more profound moments.
Like filler.
Yeah, kind of like filler, or maybe just less polished sections. This could contribute to the sense of unevenness that some readers and critics have noted over time. Not every line is pure gold, according to Rolfe.
And it seems that even earlier critics like Walter Scott and John Dryden also noted a certain lack of unity and a somewhat desultory or rambling quality to the plot and dialogue.
Yes, that's right. These earlier critical voices echoed Rolfe's sentiment, or perhaps anticipated it. They found the play somewhat disjointed, lacking a clear, cohesive, dramatic impact compared to, say, the major tragedies. Dryden, in particular, felt that the latter parts of the play tended to descend into a kind of chaotic noise and confusion. Didn't hold together for him.
So putting all this together, what are some of the main interpretations of Troilus and Cressida that have emerged over the years? Does all of this point towards a specific message or idea that Shakespeare was trying to convey?
Well, one very prominent interpretation, and it's hard to ignore, is that the play reflects a period of significant disillusionment for Shakespeare himself.
You mean personally?
Possibly, yeah. Or at least a period where he was exploring darker, more cynical themes. The portrayal of traditionally heroic figures as flawed or foolish, and the undermining of romantic ideals certainly lend themselves to this viewpoint.
Makes sense, given the tone.
Right. And while Rolfe himself disputes a direct link to the so-called War of the Theaters, that was a period of public feuding between playwrights in London.
Okay.
Rolfe downplays that, but the play does seem to engage with themes of intellectual debate, satire, reputation, and perhaps a weariness with the superficial vanities of society, which might connect to that context.
It certainly sparked a really wide range of critical opinions, hasn't it? It sounds like people either love its complexity or are quite frustrated by it.
Indeed, that's very true. Critical responses have varied enormously, from those who deeply admire its intellectual depth, its wisdom, its unflinching look at reality, to those who express disappointment with what they perceive as flaws in its dramatic structure, its character development, its overall coherence.
It's a love it or hate it kind of play, maybe.
Or at least a really admire it or struggle with it kind of play. This very divergence of opinion is part of what makes it so endlessly fascinating to study and discuss, though. It keeps generating debate.
But despite its ambiguities and the challenges it presents, it seems the core themes it grapples with, like the complexities and betrayals of love, the brutal realities of war, and the often cynical motivations behind human actions, they continue to feel relevant even today, don't they?
Absolutely. I think that's why it endures. The play's unflinching and often unsettling look at these timeless themes, even if presented in a somewhat unconventional, maybe jarring way, continues to resonate with audiences and provoke thought about the true nature of heroism, love, politics, and conflict in our own world. It asks uncomfortable questions.
So to bring our deep dive toward a close, it's clear that Troilus and Cressida truly stands apart in Shakespeare's remarkable body of work. It's a play that feels deliberately ambiguous, often satirical, and offers a uniquely critical and perhaps even, jaded perspective on the Trojan War and the enduring complexities of the human condition.
Well put.
It really does seem more intent on presenting and exploring challenging ideas and observations than on simply telling a straightforward and easily digestible dramatic story.
Precisely. And for you, our learner listening in, hopefully you've now gained a much deeper understanding of a play that actively resists easy categorization and challenges many of our conventional interpretations of Shakespeare. It offers some surprising insights into his evolving perspectives and the intricate questions he was grappling with during this fascinating period of his writing.
Definitely. So here's a final thought for you to consider long after our discussion ends. Given the play's pervasive cynicism and its profound exploration of disillusionment, does it offer a more mature view of the world, perhaps? Or maybe simply a more jaded one compared to Shakespeare's other works?
That's a great question. Mature or jaded?
And what does its continued presence in literary study, despite all these challenges and criticisms, tell us about our own enduring fascination with complexity, ambiguity, and even the darker sides of human nature? Why do we keep coming back to it?
Good questions to ponder. And remember, this deep dive is truly just the beginning of your exploration. We strongly encourage you to seek out and delve into the full text of Troilus and Cressida itself, and maybe explore some of the extensive body of critical work that has grown up around it over the centuries. What aspects of this most unconventional of Shakespearean plays resonate most deeply with you?